In what feels like a past life, I used to work in a natural food store. One of my jobs was the restocking of milk and the dairy wall, and it was never my favorite thing to do because those products are frankly heavy, and the store carried a lot of varieties of similar fake milk products, ranging from coconut milk to soy milk to shelf staple versions of all that stuff, along with grass fed cow milk and even goat milk. The one thing every one of those milk products have in common, though, is that they're made from source plants and animals most people think are safe to eat. And none of them have an inborn natural ick and gross out factor built into them by either just natural human experiences or cultural biases. But that's beginning to change with these two new milk products I have to bring to your attention today. Someone conducted an experiment on the people of Cuba with questionable nutrition and food items. It's a pretty evil thing they did there. And questionable is actually putting it mildly, because what was done here was, like I just said, evil, and who did it remains a mystery, but the Cuban state certainly helped at the very least. From HavanaTimes.org, which claims to be all about open minded writing, which for some reason sets off some red flags for me, we get this headline: What happened in Cuba with cockroach milk? I know what you're thinking. Maybe cockroach milk is a cultural thing there that we don't understand in America. Yeah, probably not. Imagine the work someone would have to do to milk a cockroach. In all seriousness, the people of Cuba were subjected to a grossly immoral food and nutrition experiment with the happy permission of their government, because of course the Cuban government allowed this to be done to their own people. Do you know anything about the history of that place? Autocratic regimes are always okay with just this kind of nonsense. It's a fact of life. Let's get some details from this. Quote, April got off to a red-hot start when it comes to controversy in Cuba's digital space. A publication on March 28, 2022 on the online edition of Radio Guama, Pinar del Rio's main radio station, put the term cockroach milk among one of the most popular internet searches in Cuba. The article talked about a, quote, crystallized milk-like substance that a species of cockroach produces, a compound that could be considered a superfood. Social media users questioned the publication that classified cockroach, quote-unquote, milk as the new nutritional drink. Soon enough, the Radio Guama article quickly went from being a simple scientific, interesting fact to being the talk of the town. I bet it did. The article unleashed a wave of criticism and a flood of memes. However, cockroach milk isn't new. The first time cockroach milk went viral was in summer 2016, when it was announced that researchers from the Institute of Biology, Stem Cell, and Regenerative Medicine in India had discovered that it could be the best superfood. There's that word again. Cockroach milk, quote, can be a fantastic protein supplement, Subramanian Ramaswamy, director of the research team, said in statements to the Times of India on July 18th, 2016. Crystals are a complete meal. They have proteins, fats, and sugars. If you study the protein sequences, they have all the essential amino acids, explained Sanchari Banerjee, one of the main authors of the research study published in July 2016 by an open access journal reviewed by the peers at the International Union of Crystallography, end quote. Remember, they're talking about a crystallized milk-like substance that these critters produce naturally, that is then highly processed into a liquid form for you to consume. The article defines a superfood as something that is low in saturated fat and dense in nutrients, which makes it not a superfood at all, since saturated fat is actually pretty good for you. And while this crystallized-like substance is certainly nutritious for cockroach larvae, since they're actually, built for consuming that stuff, it's not something even remotely fit for human consumption. But they are pushing this nonsense on human beings, and it looks like they're starting with ones who are vulnerable to coercion due to their geopolitical condition and their state of being in abject poverty. And in typical corrupt form, the state radio website pulled the article down, claiming they never promoted cockroach milk as a milk alternative, saying that it was propaganda from the enemies of the state pushing this narrative. Where have we heard that from before, by the way? We see that kind of reaction from politicians of all stripes whenever their bad ideas are exposed as bad ideas, and they then get what's natural, which is a lot of pushback as a consequence. So this isn't surprising at all. But that's not the only fake milk they're trying to push on people, because that came from earlier this year. Whether this one isn't as bad as cockroach milk, well, I'll let you decide. From NoCamels.com headline. Unlike all other non-dairy alternatives, it can be made into, quote, real cheese. Okay, so that right there is misinformation. Cheese is a product made from dairy, and last I checked, you don't get lettuce from udders of mammary glands of a mammal. Let me know if you have any lettuce-producing animals on your land, though, because I'd love to see that. From the article, quote, soy, almond, oat, coconut, rice, cashew. There are plenty of non-dairy milk alternatives on the market. This is a surprising new addition to the list. It looks exactly the same as the lettuce in your salad bowl, but it's been genetically modified, GM, to yield casein, a key protein which means it can be made into cheese that has a, quote, real dairy texture. Milk from cows, humans, and all other mammals contain casein, which allows it to be processed into a range of dairy products. But none of the other non-dairy alternatives do. Pigmentum, a startup based in Kiryat Shmona, northern Israel, plants GM lettuce in high-tech greenhouses, cultivates it with special fertilizers, and harvests the crop when it's ready, a little over 3 weeks later. It then squeezes out the juice. Over 90% of lettuce is liquid. Adds natural ingredients to give it a milk-like taste and smell, and has a product which is ready to drink, pour on your breakfast cereal, or add to your coffee. They genetically modify romaine lettuce, then irrigate or spray it with a special fertilizer that triggers the growth of whatever they've encoded into its genes. We engineer the lettuce to produce whatever we want. That's reassuring. In very, very high yields, in this case, casein, to make milk, says Lutsky. End quote. Lutsky's the scientist they've been quoting here. Of course, it's genetically modified. They've created an actual frankenfood that specifically creates an animal-exclusive protein. Casein is noted for being inflammatory for a lot of people who consume it. It's also a favorite among bodybuilders because it's a protein noted for its slow absorption. And bodybuilders will typically drink a protein shake of the stuff before bed, so while they sleep, their body is digesting this protein for maximum muscle growth response, or so their logic goes. You don't actually need any of that stuff, you just eat more meat, but whether that works or not, I don't know, since I have only limited experience personally with casein powders back before I became a carnivore. Like cockroach or plant milks, I avoid powdered foods as much as possible, since our bodies are just not designed for digesting powder. But here's another pro tip. Avoid GM foods as much as you can. We've only been consuming truly genetically modified foods for a limited time, and we don't know what the consequences of all this is going to be in the long run. Whether you agree with my basic premise that a proper human diet is at least somewhere on the low-carb to carnivore range of foods on that spectrum, we should all be able to agree that eating natural foods at the very least is the best approach. That a whole foods approach to nutrition is what human beings should be getting. We should agree at least on that much, right? Elsewhere in that article, they provide us with the list of chemicals they use to treat the lettuce juice with to create the illusion that it is milk, and they label all of them, quote-unquote, natural. There are plenty of chemicals that are natural that should be avoided, so don't let the natural label trick you into thinking something is safe. So there we have it, folks. 2 new fake milks probably coming to a grocery store near you, probably to the natural food store section of that grocery store if it's a big box like Kroger, which is where I work. It'll probably be brought to you under a marketing label that will mask the origins of the milk as far as legally possible. But what would it take to get the public to widely accept cockroach milk? To take real food scarcity or just propaganda like we're seeing with cricket powders? How about lettuce milk? Would you try that stuff? Let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. I'm Anthony Stein, and thanks for watching today.